Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I'm going to be joined here shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, and we have a special guest on this evening from DAT that's going to go a lot more in depth to help us understand the products that DAT offers. Not really necessarily a sales pitch or anything like that for DAT, but DAT has been so gracious enough to come on and share information with us. So if it's something of value that you can get from DAT and their products or services, by all means, we recommend that you continue to support them. We're starting out with the average price of diesel fuel. We have ever so slightly still creeping up, jumped up by 0.3 percentage points, showing that the national average diesel price is sitting at $5.72 per gallon nationwide. Line haul spot rates down again after a brief pause. Spot market capacity loosened quickly last week, with the equipment post hitting the seventh highest level of since 2017. In the first 2 weeks of June, dry van spot rates typically increase by 8 cents per mile on average, but the pandemic years in the last 2 weeks, dry van spot rates have dropped by 4 cents per mile, and reefer rates are down as well by 10 cents a mile, when it is typically increasing by about 7 cents per mile. Flatbed is essentially flat, but would typically be expecting to increase by 5 cents per mile on average going into the summer months. So with that being said, let me go and bring up my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
Hey, Rico, how are you?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Fantastic.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point a whole lot. Like I was saying, we have the DAT analyst, Scott Anderson, that's going to be joining us tonight. And I don't really want to waste a whole lot of time, so I'm going to bring Scott up and on board. Good evening, Scott. How are you? Uh-oh, Scott, did you mute yourself?
Hey guys,
Hey,
thanks for letting me join
There he
tonight.
is.
Looks fun. We're gonna have a good conversation tonight. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So we're live on a couple of different platforms. I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. The chat is open and available. If you have a question, type your question over into the chat. We'll get it involved into the conversation. So first off, I guess, Scott, the first question that I want to kind of throw over at you is kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do with DAT, and some of the different things that different things of your background and things of that nature.
All right. So DAT, that is a lot of my background. I've been with DAT for 15 years in the sales org. I've managed inside sales for 10 years, and my sales teams focus on consulting new carriers, new brokers in the industry, and making sure they get the right package service to get started and grow their business. We at DAT work with owner operators, new carriers, new brokers,
in the industry.
and some small shippers.
And what were you doing before you joined DAT? Were you involved in trucking or analytics or sales?
No, I was came out of school, and we talk with other people in the DAT now, and I knew very little about supply chain. I knew how to sell. I knew communications, and I have enjoyed everything I've learned about this process called supply chain that no one else knew anything about until 2 years ago. And I learned about, as I started talking to owner operators, buying our Trucker's Edge Loadboard 15 years ago.
Wow.
And how important every part of the carrier is in keeping this economy going, and that they're an essential part of that process.
Well, they certainly are. They're a essential part of our both our nations, Canada and the U.S., getting all sorts of products, but especially fresh fruits and vegetables. I think that I would say probably 75% of all the fresh fruits and vegetables that end up, in the grocery store are because of the efforts of owner operators.
Right. And
that
especially right now in this industry, as produce seasons go hot and move across the U.S., carriers are the part that moves that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the big carriers, they don't even haul, you know, with the refrigerated trailers, they're hauling various types of protein and chemicals and all sorts, and machinery even that needs heating, you know, or kept at a certain temperature. They're not touching produce. It's a game where drivers need to really know what they're doing. And well, I tell you, if it wasn't for the men and women doing that, we'd all starve.
It's on their
So
backs, on their
yeah,
flatbeds, on their reefers.
so Scott, talking about the different things, we wanted to get everybody on board and bring you on board, especially because we want to. One of the talks that's going on real heavily in the trucking industry, as far as the smaller guys, smaller fleets, so they're having trouble with negotiating. They're having trouble with if they're working primarily off the spot market. The big talk is, oh, the brokers aren't paying anything. That they're not. So, what are some different tools that if you have DAT's load boards that can help you with negotiating, understanding the market, whether or not you are in a good market with load to truck ratios that are in your favor? How much information is it that people may or may, or I want to say in this case, may not understand that they have at their fingertips when they have a DAT service?
Right. So when you buy a DAT service, you know, the first thing you think of is, you know, it's a load board to search for loads as a truck, right? And it's at a basic level. It's going to give you a list based on whatever filters you put together, and it's not just a list, and it's not just a list of phone numbers to start calling and asking what are you paying to move a load, right? You want to look at that at a couple different levels as a carrier, starting with, you know, knowing what your rates are right now. Depending on when you got in the industry, you could have got into rates in a very different time 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And one thing we all know that have been in trucking for a long time is rates change not by the year, not by the month. They change by the day and the minute when in the
Right.
spot market. And you know, before you get started, you got to know the obviouses, right? About what your truck costs to operate, right? Where is your break even? What is your round trip break even? And to know that, you got to know your truck's cost, but to know what you're going to do when you get to the spot market, you got to know national averages. When you opened your show, you started talking about, you know, van rate is down, as you know, flatbed rate is flat, reefers down a little bit, vans down a little bit. Obviously right now we all know, and that fuels up, right? And that eats into line haul rates. And we negotiate all in rates, and we want to know at the end of the day what the rate's going to get paid. And this is where you need to know what's changing in your world about fuel costs and what your break even mark is when negotiating rates.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, if you don't mind, maybe can you give us a breakdown on the different, in order to achieve and get that type of information that's going to help you and give you the best results? Can you maybe tell us the different tiers that are available from the DAT, the
Yeah,
ecosystem
you
that
mind if I just
DAT
pull
has?
up my screen here and we
Oh,
take a
please
look at
do. That would be
the
great.
website? Let's do that.
Sure. So let me turn that on, and there we go.
There we go. So DAT.com, Carrier Solutions. And that's where I started talking about right there. It's not just a load board, even though that's what you're buying a subscription for, is access to a load board. But you got to look at all the other tools that come with that, designed to help the carrier make good decisions about where they want to go, where they want to operate, how to negotiate your rates. And yes, there's a few different tiers here on the load board service for maybe, you know, partial load Bach hotshot carrier. Let me pull that up. Into what you want to be using when you're running, you know, a full size truckload owner operator. In our power load board, and that's what the beginning of the show here is what you're familiar with are market conditions maps and rate tools and triangular route tools that are going to suggest higher paying routes. And we can look at in 15-day rate averages. There's nothing more accurate in the industry for carrier than to know exactly with your trailer type on that specific lane are getting paid over the last 2 weeks. That gives you exactly what the broker's looking at when they're trying to price that freight also.
And that's a critical component, because at the end of the day, with any good negotiation, it's all about the information that you have available. Knowing the information, first off, like Scott was saying, having the information available, what it is that having your information, what it's going to take to run your cost of operation, understanding that number. We talk about that all the time, understanding your numbers, know what your break even point is, know what your cost per mile is, understanding that, and with the cost of diesel fuel and everything, you have to be on that like a hawk in order for this to make any sense, and to understand. Don't just be one of these people out here that is hollering out, don't haul cheap freight, stop hauling cheap freight. I understand the sentiment, but what's cheap for one person may not be cheap for another person. If that person doesn't have a truck note or something, his expenses are a lot cheaper, then he may be able to perform and perform at a higher level, deliver a better value proposition if it's just a transactional situation. But understand what we talk about here on the Rates and Lanes podcast. We always try to point you guys in the direction of building relationships, and the information that you have is going to help you in the process of building those relationships. Because when you can talk and speak to your potential customer or client and give them information that they may not be aware of, then that puts you in a position of a value partnership.
Exactly. And so that starts here on these national averages. As you opened your show, right, you started talking about what's changing in, fuel cost and rate per mile, right?
Right.
And so that's what you're seeing on your screen here is your full-size truckload, dry van, flatbed, reefer, national averages, averaged out to a month and blended for the current month. So when you start getting into the spot market and you're looking at a lane rate average, A to B, you can now give yourself that easy grade on, are you on a front haul lane or a back haul lane? What is the supply and demand? Is it driving me above the national averages or below the national averages? And if you're on a lane that's below national average, it might, as you said, quick to say cheap freight, but let's look at some other tools that help you reroute and get you through higher demand markets. So maybe out of the 2 of the 3 hauls you make, 2 of the 3 are on, front haul above average lanes. And at the end of the day, you come out ahead.
Absolutely. This is also, we talked about before, DAT has I have this concept that we started here on the Rates and Lanes about building a dumbbell, finding your primary. One of the things that DAT talks about is having triangles and things of that nature. But if you're a smaller carrier, a dumbbell may be sufficient. Or if you want to stay out a little bit longer, a triangle may work better for you. But DAT has the tools available for you to start to begin to build that dumbbell. You can start to list your criteria based upon what type of equipment that you have, and then based on the equipment that you have, what particular markets have enough consistent freight that is shipping historically. You can look back historically and see the amount of freight coming out of one particular area. So I'm sorry, Scott, I'll let you.
Let's look at.
Good point, Rico.
So let's look at these different markets and the demands. This is our market conditions map. It's going to give you the same van, reefer, flatbed, where you can pick a frame or a geography. So we're looking at yesterday's markets for dry van, and we're highlighting one of the highest demand markets right now, Savannah, Georgia. And in general, if at a big broad view right now, for dry van, follows what you were talking about earlier with our reefer market, where the owner operator really can go make some money. The dry van markets follow the reefer markets in demand, the seasons that push. These are the reefer markets on your screen right now, moving out of the Florida markets towards the border states and towards the West Coast, traditionally around this time of year.
Yeah.
And these are a tool that gives you that first piece of information of where do you want to position your equipment, that you are now in a place that you can negotiate your rates up because your equipment is in demand now and that broker needs you to move a load.
And and I don't know if you can zoom in on a particular market on the map there, Scott. Just kind of like, can you go directly into the market, maybe drill all the way down into it, so that people can kind of see just how robust the system is.
Wow.
Let me
And
adjust that. We're going to drill this down to a 3-digit zip code so you can really see the metro or pocket that is going to be in highest demand there.
Scott, excuse me a sec. I've got a question from one of our listeners, Justin. What package is this overview available on?
Yeah. The Power Select or the Power Office. So you need that subscription level, and then you can access it through the web or new mobile app, DAT1.
And
let me refresh the whole screen on that. We'll take a look here.
And so by understanding load to truck ratios, you understand when you hear people talk about things run off of the market. Like this is the best scenario that I can give sometimes to gauge whether or not you're in a really hot market. Sometimes the load board can tell you one thing, but one thing that is for sure, when I used to work the spot market heavily, if I would post my truck and I couldn't put my phone down without it literally melting in my hand with it ringing off the hook, I knew pretty much I was in a pretty good market.
Yes.
Because when you're in that type of a market, you don't necessarily have to call the brokers. The brokers are trust and believe the brokers are going to be calling you, and they're going to be ready, willing to negotiate and try to lock that capacity down to move those loads. But right now, with the market being what it is, and one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure that we got Scott to come on and talk to us a little bit more in depth about these services is because everybody knows that I feel that we are headed towards a recession. And what that means is we need to start preparing. We're kind of probably already a little bit behind the curve anyway, but you need to start preparing yourself to insulate yourself from the different things. And what I mean by that is developing the relationships that's not going to that you just can't get per se off of a load board, but you can use the load board to get yourself in a position to cultivate those relationships by seeing the people in the lanes that you want to run, and now you can start to begin yourself to position yourself to get the freight that you might find initially on the load board. But if you service the hell out of that customer and that broker, guess what? That load will probably not see that load board again if you can lock that down and develop that relationship with that broker.
100%.
Right. So that's one real important thing you need to do in your own marketplace, right? Before you start looking into a demand map of where you want to position yourself next. And as you said, post your truck out there so your phone rings. You got to know your top brokers, your load providers in and out of your own markets. So you already have them on speed dial and they know your name when you call.
Exactly. And the load board has the ability to show the top brokers in that particular market, correct?
Yeah, this is our top tier feature called Lane Makers. what it's showing you by volume of posting and searching in it, and you can do this to a lane specific or just into a specific destination or out of a destination. I'm looking at carriers. Let's filter this actually. Let's look at the brokers posting the most full-size van or reefer loads out of Savannah, that hot market we were just looking at. And so if this is a market you work or a market you're interested in, instead of just calling off load searching, right, you're now working at building relationships with the top providers in those markets.
Pretty incredible.
Which sets you apart from other people that are not using that type. I mean, when you look at, we talked about understanding your cost per mile a little earlier. And some people may look at the cost of a load board or something like that and say, man, that's a little expensive. Well, if you are doing your cost per mile, just take that number and break it down. Don't look at it as a big number. Break that down to a per mile basis. Break that down to put that into your numbers for every month expense. And when you break it down on that level, it doesn't go for say $600 or something like that. That's what it used to be when I was using it. When I used to use that was my service level. But I was able to break that down to a price to where I think at the end of the day, it might have been on a monthly basis, it might have been maybe 10 cents, 11 cents per mile out of my cost per mile that I was running. So if you do that, it breaks down really easily, and it's fairly easily to digest if you do it on that level.
Yeah, a load board like this is a true business expense. It is something that you make money out of when you use the tools in front of you. And no matter what subscription you're on, you have access to more than just load searching with, directory and rates. And in these top tier levels, some real research tools, market conditions maps, and lane makers. But even in our lower, almost all of our tiers, you have the ability before you ever start calling on a load, you should know your average rate per mile. And if that's researching by running load searches like you see on your screen right now, to see those average rates compared to what brokers are advertising that they want to move loads at. That's information you should know before you dial a phone number. Help you understand what should be coming through on the other side of the phone. It's not, and they're saying the same situation. Sometimes you're going to have to move a load below your national averages, right? That's just part of doing business. And if you know that ahead of time, you're going to feel comfortable of it, and you're going to know what your next move is when you get to your destination and getting move out. And we can take a look at a little bit of that, what you talked about there earlier with triangular routing, right? So if you need to get to a destination or you are targeting a high demand marketplace that you want to position your trucks to, using a tool called Tri-Hull or triangular routing is giving you suggested highest paying routes where you book 2 loads to get to where you want to go to maximize the profit and your rates and lane, rate on those lanes. So this is just an example of a major market like Chicago trying to get to a high demand market like Savannah right now. And so it's giving you up to 5 routes where if you took a direct route, you'd be at that 227 per mile, right? Below national average for this trailer type because demand isn't there on that lane. But if you can position your truck through haul 1 to one of these different destinations and then to where you want to go, you've now increased your average rate per mile well above the average for the 2, but getting through another high demand market or an off a low paying, low demand lane.
And that's critical right there to understand that if you're not running a particular dumbbell, then if you understand how to move around and work in that triangle, that's for people that may not be for someone that wants to try to get some regular home time, what would you suggest there, Scott? Do they have anything that if someone wants to try to be able to build a lane to where they want to have consistent home time? They may not be looking to go all over the country. They might not be looking to service everybody, but they want to just kind of stay in a particular market or a particular lane, back and forth. What kind of features do they have available for that?
Yeah, so if it's not 3 long hauls, right, but you want to be in and out in different areas,
Like a
of a
Chicago to
market.
Cleveland. Yeah.
So you do, something like this with the load board, and these are just tips and tricks of use. Play with your radiuses here, and then look at the advertised rates. When you come down to the loads that are moving just market to market, you want to play with your rates a little bit more than just your mile, obviously. And you can really play with the advertised rate compared to some market rates and just pick one load and then, deadhead the difference.
So understanding right
16
now
stops.
with the price of fuel and everything else, like everything that we can try to help you guys, ladies and gentlemen, with that's going to help put more tools in your toolbox. That's what we're all about trying to do. And so this is hopefully you guys are getting the value from this information that we're putting out, that Scott is kind of pulling the curtain back and giving you a little bit of a sneak peek or a behind the scenes view of a higher tier load board that you I want to encourage you to invest in your business. For one thing, that's the one thing that I do want to get across. I want you to invest in your business. Don't look at it as cost prohibitive. Look at it as an opportunity to improve your business and an opportunity for you to get better information so that you can negotiate a better price, negotiate a better to be able to negotiate better cost, not your cost, excuse me, to be able to negotiate better rates when it comes to moving your trucks.
Mm-hmm.
What
would we say?
What is your
go
most
ahead,
expensive? Excuse me, Scott. What's the most expensive package for an owner operator? What would it run them a month these days?
So here's our pricing. Owner operator should be in the 125 to 280, 280 being the office package with including the lane makers and the ability to build out a preferred network, right? So if you're using something like lane makers and you're onboarding with your top load providers in your market, you build out a preferred network in your load board where when you search at first, it's a customized load board for who you do business with.
Right.
And then after that, you can go into the big market. And so those are the tools, for 280 a month, as you said, Rico, about breaking down to cost per load or cost per mile.
It's
You're
$10 a
talking
day. It's
exactly.
nothing. And you know what? We've had several, through the last couple of years, Rico and I have had several carriers on that use a dispatching service to get them loads. They're paying an awful lot more than $280.
Yeah, your dispatcher's taking that on one load for sure, if not double that.
Exactly. So, they would be much better off to just, and there are some cases where somebody wants to use a dispatch service, especially if they're doing partial loads, because if you're doing that, it's, that's where it really pays off. But for our full load listeners, I think $280 a month for what they get, one load, the difference on one load is going to more than pay that. It's free.
And the difference on building your network, this industry is moving towards as much as they can about not just reshuffling your network right now because the conditions and the markets are different, but building out a place where a broker can advertise your load in a private network and you can book that load right on the fly through right through the website.
That works for everybody. It works. The dispatcher or the carrier salesperson at the brokerage office, his or her job is to move that freight as quickly as possible and with the best carrier. And you know what? It's not just about money. It's about the best carrier. They'll quite often in this market, they'll gladly pay a few dollars more to know that there's a good carrier on it rather than the cost of onboarding a new carrier. And, that's something for our listeners that are carriers. The cost of onboarding a new broker, is that worth the extra $10 or $20? That costs you money. That costs you a lot more than $10 or $20, and you don't know them. It's best to stick with the guys if you can, especially if we are, as Rico warned. And you know what? If you read about the stock market lately, and it seems to be doing pretty badly. Now that can change. It can pick up. It can pick up speed. That's not really a barometer of anything. But the word on the street is that there's very possibly a recession ahead of us. But we've heard that for the last number of years. So who knows? It's just people's opinion.
Yeah, I think the change in rates we've seen, has happened, and hopefully, and what you think is going to happen is rates will stay where they're at for a while. Fuel's not going to change anytime soon.
Not going to go down, that's for sure.
With a war going on overseas, that's causing change there. But all these rates and all these things you see in front of you are still, with a little bit of planning, like what we started here with. We didn't just do a load search first, right? We looked at national average rates. We looked at markets. We looked at top load providers in those markets. If you make those kind of decisions, you can still turn a good profit.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some other hidden gems that are available that people may not be aware of, that they have the ability to pull out within the load board?
The newest feature for an owner operator is in our app DAT 1, and that is the first time a carrier's been able to post my rate, buy me at rate. This is what my truck costs to move.
Oh, wow.
And so we rolled this out in March at Matt's truck show.
Right.
And as you said, if you're able to know that market where you're going to put your truck and you're in a high demand situation, and you can not just put your truck out there and have your phone ring instantly, but this is my buy me rate or my truck's rate. That's the first time a carrier's had the ability to start that conversation.
Well, that could work in a really competitive market as well. Let's say, like, if you're in let's just say you messed up your first trip out and you wind up down in Florida somewhere.
In July.
Let's just say that happens. And,
a little cold.
and if you understand and that you're gonna probably take a beating, but if you can get a load out of there, that's gonna at least kind of supplement or cover a little bit of the fuel costs. That might be a nice little feature to have as well. When the as they say, when the rabbit has the gun.
Well, the carrier, and that's the whole point, right? Now, this is the first time that carrier really gets to start that conversation, because just posting your truck beforehand, you still had somebody coming in with an offer, and now they know where you're at, and you've started that negotiation before you ever got on the phone.
Right. That's a pretty slick little feature right there.
And how has it been?
And that's what's been around forever in a load board, right? Post your truck, search for loads. So that's a sweet little enhancement now, right there on the mobile app DAT 1, right on your phone, right in the palm of your hand, to put your capacity out there and let everybody know.
Scott, how is that
you're ready to be hired
by the trucking community? Are people buying into it?
It's a conversation starter. The best we can see on the first end, right, is every time you post anything into the database, it's an advertisement sitting next to other advertisements, right? And so by you putting in that extra piece of information, your ad looks better, your truck post looks better. Somebody's going to look at that and start the conversation with you.
So what about this, Scott? I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've tinkered around on the load board, but the ability to look into the future, say for instance, like if you're looking out a day or two in advance, you know that you're moving from say Chicago to um, Arizona or something, just something wild like that, to Tucson, from Chicago to Tucson, something crazy like that. But you know, it's going to take you a couple of days to get there. Is there any way to kind of like have a guesstimate as to what the market looks like on that particular day of the week when you get to that area, or is that a little bit far-fetched?
So it's two things there, right? You can get into the database right now and start load searching and seeing what's happening in the database right now, what the market for that Tucson, Arizona we're headed is going to look like. So let's do that. So before you take a load that's going to take you there, right, you might want to look ahead and you know, do I need to negotiate my rate up or down? And when I get there, am I landing in, you know, Florida in July, or something going on in Arizona? And so the market map here is tell you what to expect, what that load to truck ratio was in your Arizona markets, right? So
Right.
Let's open it up to we can kind of see if demand's going up or down. In the bottom of your screen here, it's going to give me a day for load to truck ratio and posting counts for that market I'm headed to. And so in a situation like this, we already saw the first screen said it's pretty cold right there right now, and that you're going to have to reposition your truck farther west or to the south to really find demand. And so if you're negotiating that load that you're going to take there, now you have one last piece of information to say, yeah, I'll take that load, know that I got to move my truck 280 miles south to get a good rate back out of there. And you can maybe get a little more out of your rate that you're getting.
Well, you should get paid for the 280 miles
now to send you there.
Yeah.
Right? Now you know that information and you handed it right to the broker, and you have a reason why you should get paid more to do that.
As the old timers say, take your
So next is, okay, so if I know this is where I'm going, I'm going to pick my spot to post my truck and get that advertisement out there, and then watch the load board as those get closer and work both my truck posting and my load searching as I'm in transit towards Arizona in a couple of days.
And you have the ability. This is another thing that when the lane, I believe it was the lane maker ability. For new people that are, because we got a lot of new people that are coming into the industry, and you don't necessarily understand or know where the rates are all across the country if you're just coming in green. But you can use the lane maker's ability to be able to search out different lanes. If you don't have if you're not married to a particular lane, you can use that feature to figure out where you can make the most money on a particular lane, and start to focus on, okay, well, if I can make, I see that this lane right here is pretty consistent year round, whatever that lane may be. Say, Charlotte to Birmingham. That lane is, if it's a consistency there year round, then that can help you begin to focus on that particular lane. That's how I was able to determine the lane that I wanted to run, because I was able to drill down and look to see historically what the average rates were in those particular lanes. And then I say, okay, well, I could probably do pretty deep. If I can stay within these parameters right here, I can do pretty decent for myself, because I already understand one part of the equation, which is my cost per mile. I understand what it's going to cost me to run my equipment. So now if I can find something that fits within those parameters and still gives me a decent profit margin, then I'm already ahead of the game. And that's definitely a feature that I think people should make sure that they are aware of, that they have the ability to do.
Yeah, this is not one load at a time, right? You got to know your next move before you book this load, and you got to know what your goal is on the third load after that, and adjust to the conditions at the time. But this is not just about, adding miles to your truck and sitting on the road as long as possible and just doing one at a time. No way.
No, it's about buying useful data that we all get to analyze and see which way we want to send our truck.
And nothing makes a conversation with a broker a little more smooth than you both looking and understanding what the going rate is now. And if you know that before you start the conversation, you know what your truck needs before you start the conversation, you can usually get to a good agreement much faster.
Yeah. You know what? They know that this is a tough market, and they want to keep their carriers.
Mm-hmm.
And this gives you the ability, like I say, you can find those brokers. You can find the brokers in those particular markets that you definitely want to make sure that you develop that relationship with. Because now, I was listening to some information a little earlier, and a lot of people they're making sure that they're trying to rely heavily on their negotiated contract rates versus jumping out there on the spot market because of the increased cost of fuel. So if they have a cheaper negotiated contract rate, then they would rather move on that cheaper contract rate than to take the gamble of trying to get some freight move that's out there on the spot market right now. Well, the available spot capacity, I should say.
And you're going back right to what I said earlier, build out that private network of your preferred brokers that you want to do business with. And then when you look at a situation like this, like fine, I'll send myself down to Arizona. I negotiated with the first broker, hey, I'm going to have to deadhead 200 miles to find another load after that. And what do you know when you get back into load board here, a broker that you've already added to a preferred network has a bookable load right inside the database. And you don't even need to get into a phone call at that point. That preferred broker, that rate is fair, and you've already booked it and secured your truck's capacity on the next haul.
Wow. This is, guys, I got to say, I've been in this business a long time, and I've had, it's been 44 years since I've had to deal with fleets of trucks of my own. And when I think back to where we started from 44 years ago, we were buying J.J. Keller had a broker directory that wasn't very big of all the brokers that signed up in the U.S. And there weren't that many. And it was probably not more than 100 pages with, there weren't 10 brokers on each page, trust me. There weren't anywhere near, I would say there were probably 400 brokers in the whole book, coast to coast and Canada. And we would call, if we had somebody in Nebraska, we would phone all the brokers in Nebraska. And now to look at this in real time, it's spectacular. Really is.
Yeah, where DAT is at right now is right where you were at, and DAT was 44 years ago. This company has been there since day one as the broker industry grew, and has had the technology at the time for the customers, best technology of the time all the way through to right now what we're talking about with that DAT One mobile, where you can post your truck's rate, build out a private network, and book a load, with your thumb versus getting on the phone to even make a phone call.
Yeah, it's just it's so amazing how interactive this and how live it is. It's phenomenal, and it's cheap. At $280 a month.
Yeah,
Interesting to know what. Go for it.
Go ahead,
Rico.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say that's interesting to think that somebody, might hedge, the success of your trucking company over a tool like this that actually drives the profit if used correctly.
What you people at DAT have done, this is a no-brainer for anybody that operates trucks that needs backhauls. You know what? If you're an aggregate hauler or dump hauler, and you go from the pit, the quarry to construction sites, you don't need this. But if you're If you're hauling anything else, anywhere else, and you need to find backhauls or you need to find downhauls to get your backhaul, this is the tool.
Yeah, if you're a new owner operator in this industry, moving market to market or long haul, this is the best thing in the industry to help you make some money. There's nothing else out there that will do it.
No, I totally agree. Unfortunately, some of the people that get into the industry come from mostly they'll come from the driver end, and they're very proficient as truck drivers, but they haven't done this side of it, and it looks real easy until you do it. They borrow $5,000 or whatever to buy a used truck, and then they're in business. There's no barrier to entry, and that's how people get into trouble.
Yeah, I think that one of the
Good.
Go ahead, Scott. I didn't want to step on you.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question as I'm talking about, as a carrier should look ahead and look at their rates and figure out the brokers that are most important in their market. Tell me more about the conversation you have when you call that broker, and maybe you don't want to negotiate a load today, but you want to bridge a relationship and, become a preferred carrier for them.
Well, the things that we always try to tell our people is that what we preach here. We want to sell the relationship first, of course. If we don't want it to be a transactional situation. So I'm going to be asking questions, especially if it's something that if I'm trying to cultivate that relationship with that broker. How often do they have this load? Is there a particular date? Does it move on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or does it move on Tuesdays and Thursdays? How is it that, figuring out a way that I can make sure that I can tell him what my schedule is. If I already know what one end of my schedule is, let him understand and know my availability. I'm going to be available. I'm available in this particular market every week on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'm here, hook or crook. I don't do anything else but this particular market, and that way they know that they have guaranteed capacity. I'm guaranteeing them that I'm going to be in this market at this time. That's the thing. I think that's the critical component. Once you find someone if you're selling yourself and you're dealing with a broker, you have to let them know that you're going to be available. The availability is the best feature that I think that people can gravitate to. And you can show consistency that you're always available in that market. You can't be all things to all people. Especially for us smaller guys, one truck or smaller fleets, 1 to 5 fleets. We can't compete with the JB Hunts, the Snyders, and the Swifts on what it is that they do. They are very proficient at what they do. But what we can whoop them on is being able to be nimble and quick within the market and understanding how what our value proposition is, understanding what our costs, be able to speak intelligently, not just the negotiating skill of, oh, is that all you got in it? Can't you do a little bit better than that? You got to be able to carry on the conversation a little bit more of a little bit higher level, and also, be personable. Be able to. It's very difficult, but one of the features is that you can see the brokers if you happen to know that if they are local and you're dealing with if you're dealing with a local office that's in that particular market, that may provide an opportunity for you to be able to look them up and be like, hey, I'm going to be in town this particular day that week. Let's go grab lunch or something like that. Do something that's going to set you apart so that those particular brokers understand and they look at you in a totally different facet than what they look at the transactional. The only thing that the other person has to offer is price. Because if you can break that barrier and get them to understand you and know you, and you understand them and you know their business, then price is not necessarily the biggest obstacle that they have to negotiate on.
That's really the least important. And you know what, Scott? If you really want to turn a freight broker off, tell him you've got one truck and you run 48 states. He'll burn your number because you're no good to him, because when he has a load going from Boston to Alabama, and if he were to call you, which he'd have to be pretty desperate to call you, you're probably going to be in Alaska or in Florida at that time.
You're nowhere near. Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to want anything to do with you. And another thing to add on to what Rico was saying, if you get a chance, and a lot of these people are too busy to go for lunch, find out how many people are in the office and bring in a box of donuts or a big thing of Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts coffee, stuff like that. It goes a long way. It sets you apart.
And it's a business write-off.
This is relationship building, right? And that's what I was saying. You know, instead of calling and saying, what are you paying to move a load, and then yelling cheap, cheap, cheap and hanging up the phone, you know, what you're trying to do is build a successful business relationship with as many quality brokers as you can. And they're trying to do the same thing on their end to get this business done.
Right.
And so,
and you know what? Tell the people the truth. You know, if you do pick up a load on your first load, you know, you make a real impression on your first load. So if something happens, you're stuck in traffic, tell the broker. And the other thing to do is get the broker the POD as fast as you can. Get it to him, get him a picture, call him and tell him I'm empty or they're unloading me. That goes miles. You know, and that broker, if you send him an email saying I'm in the door unloading, when that broker gets into work, grabs his coffee and looks at his computer and goes, wow, is that guy Scott ever good? I gave him a load. I've never used this guy before. He's already there. He's unloading. I like this guy. Now, again, Scott's no good to him if next week, you know, there was a load from Chicago to Cleveland this week, and next week he calls Scott and Scott says, sorry, I'm in California. You probably lose his interest. But that's where it's so important to have a regular route that you serve. And that's how you build a business.
And another thing is, you might be able to convince a broker if you develop and you service them, and I've had this happen to me. They have been able to go back to their customer and convince them that, hey, I got a really good carrier working this lane, but he's not. You guys ship on a Tuesday. Is there any way possible that y'all can maybe ship that, move that load around to where it can ship out on a Monday instead of that way? I can put this guy on that particular load, and we definitely, it's going to work out better for everybody involved. And that influence and being able to have that, build that relationship and that rapport goes, it's untold on the value proposition that you do when that happens for everybody involved. Find a win-win-win situation. Be able to solve problems, be a problem solver. Be able to think uniquely and outside of the box, that something innovative or you know, just sometimes, I'm not saying do favors, but sometimes, you know what I'm saying, sometimes you can work something into the relationship to where you provide value and find a way to be able to capitalize on that value that you provide.
Letting the broker know as soon as you're empty, and letting them know that you want to do it next time. That's good business. That's not favors. That's just doing it right. And that creates somebody that wants to hire you again.
Yep. And you know what? I can tell you from my own experience, both on both sides of the desk, a good broker will bend over backwards for a good carrier. Just like Rico said, you know, if the broker's got a good carrier that can only do the load on Monday and Wednesday, but it ships on Tuesday, that broker will call that customer and try to convince them, listen, ship it on Monday or ship it on Wednesday because I got this good guy and he's going to solve all your problem. And the customer usually will listen.
Yes. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah, because everybody wants their problem solved. Problem is going to be solved by having somebody good doing the work.
So that's exactly where I thought, as we walk through all these little tools and tips and tricks about building out your business and knowing your rate and knowing how to position your truck and knowing how to get it out there, at the end of the day, this will never change. This is relationship building and a relationship business.
Right.
And industry.
We can throw all the data and all of the load boards and everything else to make it easier, and so we can drill down with and get more information. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's the relationship that counts. And we have seen for the last 25 years or so, we've seen a real push by big business to take the relationship out of the business equation. And it works until something happens. And when something happens, somebody's got to get on the phone and start looking for a truck. And that's when, in this market especially, that's when a relationship counts.
Absolutely.
And it bridges it to and then you've now secured your truck and your headaches go away and you can grow your business and do good business.
Exactly.
So, I'm looking at the time and we coming up on it fast. The hour just blew right by us.
Oh my God, what happened? This is my fastest hour of the week. You know that, Rico?
So, Scott, I would like to give you an opportunity to open up the floor to tell the good people how they can find you, how they can get in contact with you, and if they have any further questions, how they can get involved with DAT if they need to upgrade their packages that they're on now, all that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, this is DAT, DAT.com, DAT1 on your mobile phone. We have live tech support training 7 days a week. You have a territory manager that would love to talk to you about your subscription. And you have sales consultants that want to know what your business is doing and which are the right tools for you at this time to help grow your business. And so check us out at DAT.com. Call us at 800-547-5417. And this is a great show, guys. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Great having you on. And I've learned so much about, how much you people provide the small carrier for what I think is a reasonable amount.
Yes, the owner operator, that's our customer. We got customers from top to bottom, but we love talking to the owner operators and helping them grow to big business and successful business.
Travis is right with you on that one. And we've watched several people that start out as owner operators that have big trucking companies. The biggest trucking companies there are. I'm going to name Werner, Swift, Hunt, Knight. They all started with one guy and one truck.
Yes, they did.
Every one of them. So the American dream is still alive and well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Scott, we definitely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come on and join us tonight and to share, kind of pull the curtain back and give us the inner workings on how the different things and that DAT has to offer and that is available. Chuck, let the good people know how they can find you, and we'll get ready to back this puppy into a hole until next week.
Okay. Best way to we're just working through, I'm one of the last ones to get my phone updated. So I'm going to give you my email address. It's just chuck@traffix, TRAFFIX.com. Send me an email with your phone number. If I can help any of our listeners in any way get set up as a carrier at Traffix, or if you've got some challenges in your business or you have some questions, it's my pleasure to give back to anybody in the industry, but especially to our listeners. So just feel free, send me a quick email. By next week, I should have a new extension, and I'll share that with everybody. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you, the listeners or the watchers, the viewers, I should say. We're still kind of getting used to this new format that we're going under, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Give us some feedback on it. If you got questions, anything for a future show, always drop them in the comments. We're always trying to take notes and see what we can do to help put more tools in your toolbox. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe out there, stay healthy, Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip flop. God bless.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Scott.
Scott. Take care.